Yeah, I have a very lovely run-up. And I just want to say from my end, so you've seen me throughout these 8 years. Perhaps unbeknownst to you, I was traveling throughout this whole journey into different locations. I live on a sailing boat with my family at the moment. So as you will see me, I'll be in motion because I'm currently sailing, and I hope my connection will hold up for the entire session. I have Charles, I know, is back up here. So if anything goes wrong with the satellite connection, I know, Charles, you'll be standing in for me. But hopefully the Starlink connectivity holds up for us. So yeah, I want to welcome everyone to the session. Today, we are looking at driving the transition to agroecology through novel and effective monitoring and evaluation techniques. I want to, before we go ahead with a bit of a description of the program, let you know that my colleague Charles will be putting up this little quiz about the type of stakeholder that you are, who's in the room. So as you enter the room, as you see the window pop up, just tick the type of stakeholder you are, and we will look at results a bit later. I also want to just remind people who need interpretation that you can go at the bottom of your screen. If you need translation into French or English, and you choose your favorite language, your needed language. Pour ceux qui ont besoin de traduction vers le français, vous allez en bas de la page de votre session Zoom.
So for those of you who need translation, you can access the language of your choice at the bottom of your screen.
I think for everybody is well familiar with the hosting organizations, the organizing committee, AFSA and SKY, but we like to reintroduce everyone to AFSA and SKY. So briefly, Charles, if you want to present AFSA for those who don't know you yet.
Mute myself. Okay. So thank you so much, Shasha, and thank you so much, everyone, for joining. This is our very last webinar, and we are very excited to have come this far. So I'm going to tell you what AFSA is. AFSA is the Alliance for Food Sovereignty in Africa. It was launched in 2011. And as its name suggests that it's an alliance of African civil society actors who are advocating for food sovereignty and agroecology in Africa. AFSA comprises 40 members across 50 African countries. AFSA promotes African-led solutions, bringing together traditional knowledge with natural resource management and control. And in general, I can say AFSA champions agroecology for climate action, agroecology for farmer-managed seed systems, agroecology for land rights and healthy soils, and agroecology for sustainable food and nutrition system. If you want to know more about AFSA, I'm going to share the website in the chat, in the Zoom chat, so you can read more about AFSA. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And now I would like to ask Stephanie Aubin, if you can please briefly introduce the Seed and Knowledge Initiative.
Thanks very much, Sasha, and good morning, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Stephanie Aubin, and I work with the Seed and Knowledge Initiative, SKI, which is a regional partnership of 15 diverse organizations in Southern Africa. So we have NGOs, community-based organizations, farmer organizations, research institutions, national networks as part of the partnership. The partnership was started in 2014 with a focus on promoting farmer-led seed systems in the context of agroecology and food sovereignty in Southern Africa. So that's the region we work in, and we do both grassroots level work supporting farmers there, but also national, regional, and global level advocacy. Since 2020, we've been collaborating with AFSA to jointly design and implement this Healthy Soil, Healthy Food initiative. We have 6 SKY partners who are hosting a Healthy Soil, Healthy Food Center, namely SFHC in Malawi, Kasisi in Zambia, Poret and Soro and Chinika in Zimbabwe, and Bawatch in South Africa. So these 6 partners are leading the Healthy Soil, Healthy Food movement in the SKY partnership and in the Southern African region. And the regional team, which I'm part of, is providing coordination support. So similarly, I'll put the link to the SKY website on the chat if anyone wants to know more about what we're doing and who we are. Thanks, Sasha.
Thank you very much, Steph. So yeah, it's been quite a journey that we've been running up to now. I see my internet connection says it's unstable. Can you hear me loud and clear?
Yes, I can.
Yeah?
You're very clear.
Okay, okay. Hopefully it holds up. So yeah, we've been actually walking quite a journey. We are now in the final session of this 8 series that we've been running over the past 4 or 5 months. And this session, I think, came very much at the request of our stakeholders and our practitioners in the ground. We're going full circuit, having obviously taken a deep dive into how do we manage adequately our crop systems, our fertility cycles, animal systems. We looked at the markets, we looked at the strategies for advocacy. And now we're actually going to go and look at how do we assess whether we are performing as we have set out to do. How do we monitor whether the changes that we are bringing about are positive, be these intended or unintended? And I think the intricacy here is that asking these M&E and learning question, because I think we're really talking about a male system, is to which extent, how does it link to the specificities of agroecology? Agroecology as a science, as a movement, and as a practice. And there are lots of tools out there. And what have been the experiences of the organizations pioneering this work when it comes to assessing changes, not only on the biophysical elements, but on the softer stuff as well, the social fabric, the learning exchanges, whether there was impacted policy level, and the synergies that we're looking at. So this is quite a challenging field, and there've been tools developed, and what we want to understand today is how can these tools be harnessed? How have these been adapted to local context? What is working? What are the challenges? What are the takeaways from your practice as an organization in using these tools? So to answer these questions today, we have Robert Goluba. He will be telling us about the FAO's characterization of agroecology tool and how it's been used in Uganda. They've done a great job at customizing it, and Robert's got a lot of takeaways to share on this. We will then hear from Moses Oburu. He will now take us to the sphere of the private sector, looking at the business agroecology criteria tool, BAT, which was originally developed by BioVision, and its practical application in Uganda. So there again, some very practical learnings that we will hear from Moses. And then to conclude the discussion, or to bring the regional dimension to it with a focus on policy level impact, will be Abbott Ntwali, who's the M&E officer at AFSA. He will be sharing with us his takeaways in the use of the principle-focused evaluation and outcome harvesting. So yeah, we're very excited to have everyone today in this session. Some quick housekeeping. I think people would be introducing themselves in the chat box. We also like to ask you to please follow the toolbox, the Kobo toolbox link that Charles will be sharing in the chat box, where you can also type in your details, and we can keep a good track of who's been in the room. We will also, just so that people are aware of the running order, we're going to first hear our speakers. We're going to allow them 10 minutes to present. And we will then have a 30-40 minutes Q&A with them. You are, however, most welcome to drop your questions during the speakers' presentations into the Q&A box. And we will keep a close eye on this Q&A box to make sure that all the questions get answered either in the writing, either in the plenary session. Yeah, I think I'm going to be at this stage sharing the results of our little poll so that we can see who's in the room. I think this will be useful for our speaker as well. So let's see if I can read up. 70% of the people answered. I'm going to share the results. You should see them pop on your screen. So yeah, you can see that participants are mainly made of members of NGOs and CSOs. We have 20% researchers and 5% farmer representation, 3% from the private sector. So this is useful for you, esteemed speakers, to know who's in the room. And I'm sure your presentations are very much suited to this audience. With no further ado, I'm going to ask you, Robert, please, to start sharing your presentation. And while you do so, I'm going to quickly introduce you so that people know who you are. Yeah, and you can go in screen in PowerPoint sharing view. So Robert Uluba is a seasoned agroecology specialist with a decade of hands-on experience. He's serving as a program officer for agroecology and sustainable natural resource management at Pelum, Uganda. He has a responsibility of establishing agroecology excellence. Through ongoing research in the field, he continuously seeds innovative solutions to propel of ecological organic agriculture. Robert is also a master trainer for the Knowledge Center for Organic Agriculture in Africa, KCOA, and a regional trainer for the Ecological Organic Agriculture Leadership course in East Africa. Robert, a warm welcome. I hope we're gonna have a good sound. We were testing the sound earlier, so please make sure to speak very loud and clear. You have 10 minutes.
Okay, thank you so much, Sasha. And I hope my sound is good now. I need the sign that it's good. Okay, that's great. Thank you all for joining the webinar. Thank you, APSA, for organizing this. Like I've been introduced, I'm Robert Bulova, and I'll be taking you through assessing transition to sustainable agriculture and food systems using the FAO developed tool, that is characterization of agroecology transition. And to begin with, there is increasing interest in agroecology as a way to move towards a more sustainable agriculture and
Sorry, the interpreter cannot follow. The interpreter cannot follow.
Because of heterogeneous methods of data.
Sorry, Robert, the interpreter cannot hear.
Okay, but the sound is good.
Ludo, how is it now?
No, no, the sound is. I can't translate.
Yeah,
I might be able to understand from now, now and then, but I can't translate.
Sasha, what's your advice, Sasha?
I'll try to speak so loud.
Yeah, it's just the quality of your voice. It just makes you a little bit faint.
Maybe he could get closer to the gadget, the device.
Yeah, that's what we had been suggesting. Yeah, as close to the mic as possible. The headphones would be the best. Let's try. So Robert, try speak now.
Can you hear me now?
We'll ask Ludo. Can you hear Ludo?
Yeah.
Maybe he should try and speak. Maybe he should switch on his video and speak right into his device.
Robert, keep speaking as loud as you can. I think you need to actually just increment your voice.
Ask him to speak right into the device. He can switch the video off and speak into the device.
You turn off the video,
Yeah.
Robert, and just speak directly to the device, if you're able to do that.
Okay, I think let's run with it. Try to speak as loud as you can, okay? As close as you can to the mic. Okay, Robert, is there an issue with the slideshow?
Yeah, we could give Robert a minute or two and we go to the second speaker maybe.
Yeah, I was going to suggest this because I think it's actually a connectivity issue now. The screen's frozen. So I think we're just going to move on to the next speaker, Moses. We're really sorry to call on you at the 11th hour, but there's definitely a connectivity issue. Would you like to bring up your screen and then we can go ahead with introducing you and hopefully we can resolve this connectivity issue. We apologize about that. We were really hoping everybody would have a stable connection. Moses, I'm briefly going to introduce you. Thank you for being so flexible. I think you can, yeah, screen share, fantastic. So Moses Oburu has worked in the field of agribusiness for many years. He has worked with several SMEs in the seed sector, irrigation, disaster response, and organic agriculture specifically, driving production, certification, marketing, and distribution of agroecologically certified agriculture inputs for crops, livestock, poultry, and aquaculture. And Moses is the program manager of a business called VermiPro Limited, which manufactures all kinds of inputs. And he, I believe, has been using the specific tool, applied it specifically to his business. So we very much interested, Moses, in hearing your takeaways from the use of this tool and how you've been working with it. You've got 10 minutes. Over to you, and thank you for being so flexible.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Good morning, everyone. As Sasha has introduced, I'm called Moses Kaburu. I'm taking you through the insights on use of the business agroecology criteria tool. The purposes of this tool is actually one, to make it easy for entrepreneurs and financiers to assess their enterprise through the agroecology perspective, and also offer equal consideration to enterprises to look at those that are actually influencing food systems. Then the tool also helps entrepreneurs in assessing information about how they can improve their enterprises. And finally, for those financiers of agroecology enterprises, this tool helps them to actually look at those enterprises which have bigger impacts or which would actually contribute more to sustainable food systems. So this act was actually derived from the agroecology criteria tool, and specifically, this one was customized by BioVision Trust, and the tool is an open source tool. It's available on the site. I'll put right below this slide. It mainly helps these enterprises to look at how they can become more agroecological. The first time this tool was launched in Uganda was in August last year. That was introduced by BioVision Trust. And then we tried to apply this to the business I work with, that is VermiPro. And we also had a session to share with some agroecological entrepreneurs. There are about 40 numbers who were undergoing some business incubation organized by Rutical. So about the tool, it has 6 sections, as I will take you through. The very first section is about the enterprise. Here, basically, you just need to enter information about your enterprise, your name, the enterprise name, the year it was started, and then some extra business information like size of operation, number of employees, and so on. And to work with this tool, you really don't need to have a lot of background on agroecology. Then the second slide has principal questions. So these questions actually relate to the activities that the enterprise is doing, the processes within its operation that fit within the principles of agroecology. And I won't go much in detail. The principles are listed here. As you can see, there are 13 principles, and all these fit within the 3 operational principles. That is improving resource efficiency, strengthening resilience, and then also securing social equity. Then the third section of the tool has screening section questions. Now, these questions help the enterprise to look at those potential conflicts. For example, as a business, you may be focused on making profits. However, you could be having some practices within your operation that contradicts the principles of agroecology. So basically here, you just need to be very honest with your enterprise, give the answers as they are, because at the end of the day, the tool will help to highlight those areas that you need to improve on in order for you to be as much agroecology as possible. Then the fourth section of the tool has impact questions. Here we look at the outcomes of any of that particular enterprise activities. For example, if they are able to measure their carbon footprint, they can measure water usage. So this also helps to contribute and to assess how efficiently the enterprise is utilizing the natural resources and how it is actually also combating effects of climate change. Then finally, there is a section for the entrepreneur score. Now, this section, you don't need to change anything. Once you filled in both the principal questions and answered both the principal questions, then once you reach this section, it will show you exactly where your scores are and where probably like the exact scores, how much you've got as per each of the principles. Then the section still continues and shows you which of the SDG goals the enterprise is more aligned to. For example, you may find there are some goals that you're contributing 0 or you're completely not aligned to. And then just below that, you'll be able to see some of the suggestions for improvement. Like in this slide, you'll see element of recycling, animal health, and then synergy. But of course, you have to answer as much questions as applicable to the enterprise, because the more you put in not applicable, then the tool will not be able to come up with very proper measurements. Then the sixth section now is about the financial scorecard. Here, the tool summarizes the feedback from the whole, from whatever data that the enterprise has loaded in. Because as normal financiers normally always look at the business performance in terms of figures, in terms of profits and so on. But here it summarizes for, let's say, the agroecological financer, the different scores of this business in terms of the capacity, in terms of profitability, in terms of alignment to the SDG goals, in terms of contribution or compliance with the principles of agroecology, and also highlighting areas where the enterprise needs to improve on. Now, those areas highlighted is actually what the enterprise would incorporate into their day-to-day activities or in their next period's action plan for the potential financer to be able to look at how this enterprise is measuring its impact and its overall operation to remain agroecological and sustainable. Then finally, after filling in this tool, it gives a summarized graphics like this. There are two ways. The enterprise can either access the site, which is agroecology-pool.org/BACT. Within there is a section you can upload your Excel file. Once you've uploaded, there is just one button you need to click, and then it will generate for you these illustrations. And with this, it shows you where the enterprise, the scores of the enterprise based on the different operational principles of agroecology. And then the organization that we did profile this with is Vermipro, as Sasha had introduced. We are now 5 years in operation, specifically manufacturing agricultural inputs from ranging from fertilizers, pesticides, fungicides, and many others. So far, I can say from using these tools, we've been able to comply with a number of standards, and we have certification from the national level here, the regional and international certifications to the EU, NOP, and Japanese standards. Currently, that has also helped us to look at how best to improve our operation, for example, reduction in carbon footprint, whereby we currently produce concentrates of some of our products, and if we need to cross to other markets, let's say within Africa, we take smaller volumes of the concentrates, and then when we produce from there, we are able to increase the size 20 times, and this helps us to reduce on emission during transportation and logistics. Then we are actually scaling to other countries in case there are some interested agroecological enterprises looking at replacing, let's say, chemical fertilizers, we have very effective organic and biological solutions, and we are ready to offer them any support needed. Some of our products look like this, as you can see in the screen, and our website is also indicated in there. And when you open our website, the very first page you'll see, the homepage shows living soil is where all plants deserve to grow. So whatever we do, whether it is fertilizer products, whether it is pest control products, they're actually very compatible with nature. They contribute to soil health. So I can say we are purely into regenerative agroecology.
Okay. Thank you, Moses. I don't know if it's me, but we lost your last words, but at least we got your full presentation there. Wonderful. And I think you got the good opportunity to advertise your business at the same time. Moses, thank you so much. Just a quick one so that we all clear on the outcome of this process for you. What would you say are the two sort of, you know, very strong takeaways from you in the use of this tool? Has it led to you changing or making any significant changes to your business to have it better aligned to agroecological principles? And yeah, very briefly, if you can share that. You mentioned your carbon footprint tracking, was that linked to it, or anything else that you can share so that we clear on that?
Thank you. So far, I can say when it comes to measuring impact, so far we have not deployed that. However, from the overall practice, from engagement with other enterprises, we realize that we are actually doing much better. For example, when we use this tool, we've been able to increase certification of our products from just 3 to more. We've also been able to look at how to revive our operation. Initially, we were making ready products and sending. I can give you just one example why I mentioned about the issues of carbon footprint. Before, if I would need to send, let's say, 1 container of fertilizers to, let's say 20 containers of fertilizers to a market like Malawi, with that would need 20 trucks or trailers to ferry that material from Uganda to Malawi. And remember, transportation, again, we are using fossil fuels. But when I produce and send concentrates to Malawi, I just need to send 1 truck or 1 trailer and it will produce what is equivalent to the 20 trailers. So it is that is just one of the areas. When it comes to measurement, we will need to really look at also some other equipment or tools to measure, for example, carbon sequestering or reduction in emission. E.g., if we supply, let's say, inputs for 10,000 acres, and then they are replacing use of synthetic fertilizers, like urea, then we should be able to measure what would be the emission rate of applying urea in 10,000 acres compared to application of the biofertilizers, which actually don't have any emission.
Okay, that's very useful. So it allows you to track the practice or the impact of your practices versus a conventional scenario. So that also makes for a good business case. Thank you very much for this, Moses. I'm sure there'll be lots of questions addressed to you. Please, if you've got any questions for our presenters, drop them in the Q&A box. You'll see the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. You can write your question there. You can address it to a speaker or to all speakers. And we will take these up as we go. Charles, I am not seeing Robert on my screen anymore. I tried to touch base with him offline. I don't know if he's with us.
Yeah, Robert is here.
Yeah,
there you go. Sorry, you're under another name. Okay, let's try your mic. You want to speak, Robert?
yes. Hello, everyone. Can you hear me, Sasha, now?
It's much better.
Wow,
Fantastic.
wow.
I think let's not waste any time. Bring up your screen and I think start over with your presentation again, because we would not be giving it justice otherwise. Good move you did there to change computers. Oops, you just need, to go into presentation mode. And you can run with it.
Okay. Sorry about the internet connection. and my machine and the sound, things of technology. So I was saying that there is increasing interest in agroecology as a way to move towards sustainable agriculture and food systems. However, the evidence of agroecology contributing to such systems has remained heterogeneous due to differing scales, time frames, and knowledge gaps. And therefore, assessing the conditions and the performance of agroecological transitions in different contexts is key to supporting these transitions. So the tool for agroecology performance evaluation, that is the TEP tool, was developed by a team of 70 representatives of agroecology-related organizations worldwide. And this was to produce and consolidate evidence on the multinational performances of agroecological systems. And I had the opportunity to be taken through this tool by in Malawi, and 3 steps or 4 steps. Step 0 looks at describing the systems.
Oops. It's terrible for Robert.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It was going so well.
We'll give him another chance, no problem.
Okay, hopefully.
We'll give him a second or two.
Yeah. Otherwise, but we're just going to ask you, are there Roberts coming back? And screen sharing. You back, Roberts? And you need to unmute.
Are you going to
And I was saying that
yes, hello.
Yes, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you. Please go ahead.
Yeah, so the tool has 4 steps, and the first step looks at describing the systems and context. Like we normally say, agroecology is specific context. We cannot have the same systems across the world. So step 1 will look at describing the system and context. Then step 2 that I'm going to really focus on is characterization of agroecological transition, and this is the CAET tool. Then the third step looks at the core. Then the 4th step looks at the joint analysis of whatever you get from step 1 and step 2. And the TEP tool can be used to assess the extent of agroecological transitions among agricultural producers in a community or territory. It can also be used to monitor and evaluate projects by characterizing the initial and subsequent steps in an agroecological transition. This same tool can be used to evaluate widely diverse agricultural systems against agroecological elements and how they contribute to the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals. So the TEP application can support the transition of all forms of agricultural systems towards more sustainable practices and the formulation of adequate policies to enable this transition. The CAET tool consists of characterizing the level of transition of agroecological systems, e.g., we can talk about farms, we can talk about households, we can talk about communities and territories. And we use this using the 10 elements of agroecology. For example, we have an element of diversity, like we can see the 10 elements here. I may not go into the details, but we have diversity, co-creation and sharing of knowledge. We look at synergies, we look at efficiency, recycling, resilience, human and social values, culture and food traditions, responsible governance, and solidarity economy. So how do we use this tool? This tool has a score sheet, and this is how it looks like. So the score sheet is for each and every element of agroecology. I will give an example of diversity. Diversity is further divided into 4 indices: diversity in crops, diversity in terms of animals, diversity in terms of trees, and diversity in terms of activities that are being carried out on the farm. So for example, when you look at crops, You award marks according to how the farm is performing in relation to agroecology. If, for example, a farm has monoculture, you're going to give it a 0. If a farm has one crop covering over 80% of cultivated area, you give a 1. But if a farm has high number of crops that are well adapted to the local and changing climate conditions, that farm is given a 4. So this score sheet has indices and the scores you award to an individual or a farm or a community, depending on the element. The other example is on efficiency. And since we are talking about healthy soils, you look at use of external inputs. If all inputs are produced and bought outside the agroecosystem, then it is listed agroecological, you award a 0. But the totality of inputs is produced within an agroecosystem or exchanged with other members of the community, and you're having a closed system, that one becomes agroecological. So the other index is about ecological management of fertility, ecological management of pests and diseases. So when you come here, this score sheet is going to give you the practices on how you can score, whether you give a 0, a 1, a 2, a 3, or a 4. Then the other thing, when the tool was being developed, when you look at the score sheet, some are in yellow background. We have ones that are in yellow and red. Then we have ones that are in blue. The indices that are indicated with red and in the yellow background, we score twice because they are mandatory. And this picture shows the time when we were in Malawi with Pablo and we are trying out the tool. So this is the same score sheet for another element, and this is synergies, and this is recycling, the same. So I developed a data collection sheet. So when you go to the farm, you look at the synergies, you look at the elements and the indices, and you also go to the score sheet and you begin awarding marks. For example, if number 1 is Robert as a farmer, then you look at the element of synergies and crop livestock aquaculture integration, and this farmer Robert has a 4, and this index is in red, you double and you give an 8. So after collecting your data, you then input into the tool. So I customized this tool that you just input data and it will compute. Like here, we are looking at the different elements, then the different indices. And for this particular project, I coordinated in Uganda for 3 years. We collected the data in 2019, 2020, and 2021. So if on the screen you can see a farmer, Ali in Zazahara. We collected the data in 2019 and 2020 and 2021. Then the tool computes and it's going to give you percentages. So these are the percentages of the farmer for each element, depending on the indices. So for example, for diversity, in another project that we did with the Trocare, at the end of the project, you see that farmer Ojuman was at 81%, then 83%, then 75%. So as you put in the data, the tool computes and it's going to give you the percentages of the individual farmers. On the other hand, when you put all the farmers in the tool, then you can come down here and begin selecting which farmer is under transition, which farmer is agroecological, and which farmer has not transitioned. For example, from the analysis of 20 farmers, we can see down that 9 farmers are above 75%, 71%. So they are agroecological. Then 8 farmers are between 51 to 70. They are under transition. Then 3 farmers are less than 50, and those ones are agroecological. So after having the percentages, you can now develop the radar charts. And radar charts can be used to show you the performance of the different farmers on a farm in relation to the elements of agroecology. So for this particular chart, I extracted it from a project from Sokadido that we implemented with Trocare. And these 20 farmers can be put on the same chart, and each line represents the performance of an individual farmer in relation to the elements of agroecology. Similarly, the same tool can also be used to track the transition of an individual farmer for the many years. So this is the chart that I use for an individual farmer. So this farmer, Zahara, is a farmer that I extracted from a project that I coordinated in Uganda. So in 2019, the middle chart was how Zahara's farm was. And after seeing this, that diversity was almost at below 10%, then resilience was 0. Then you sit down and you use this chart to design your interventions on how you're going to improve diversity, on how you're going to improve resilience, on how you're going to improve co-creation and sharing of knowledge. So the tool basically is going to help you to assess the situation at the beginning of the project. And after having the results, then you sit down and design the interventions on how you're going to improve each of the elements that the farmer or community or family is not doing well. So basically, after 2019 and evaluating the farmer, then we had to implement the project, and the green line outside was now at the end of the project that the farmer had improved diversity to 100%, and resilience was around 70%, and the other elements of agroecology as being seen in the chart. So the lessons learned from using this tool is that somebody needs to have clear understanding of the subject matter, and that is agroecology. Because when you go to the field, agroecology being context specific, you have to agree that if you found 3 animals on the farm, then maybe this is not agroecological. And also we have different regions, and you have to sit and agree that in this region, somebody who's agroecological has to be like this. So a clear understanding of agroecology is a must for people who will be collecting data. Then also the tool is used in the context-specific scenarios. If I collect data in Uganda, I might not have to use the same yardstick when I'm collecting data in a semi-arid region. So these are some of the lessons that we got from the tool. And this tool can be completed as a self-assessment by producers or a community, or as guided exercise by technicians, NGO workers, scientists, or government agents. While no prescriptive threshold is defined, systems with high scores across all elements are considered already well engaged in agroecological transition. So this is a nutshell of the tool. And maybe I can show you the real tool in an Excel document.
Robert, yes, please do it very briefly because you're a bit over time. So you can quickly show the Excel sheet. And so that people rest assured, there's many requests in the chat box to please have the PowerPoint shared. We will share these. In fact, I'm going to drop the link in the chat box right now. But more than the PowerPoints, you will actually get, you will see there's a resource file there where some of the tools mentioned in this webinar are made available to you. So the Excel sheets precisely that Robert is sharing now on screen is a resource that has been dropped in the Google Drive that I've just shared. So thank you very much for sharing those resources. And they will be made available in French as well. There's a few requests about having the PowerPoints ready in French. We normally have them ready for the day. We didn't manage to have them all translated today, but these will be coming up and you will see them in the Google Drive in French as well. Any last comments from your end, Robert? Thank you for sharing the Excel there.
Yeah, thank you so much. And sorry about the technical bits from my end. I'm really sorry, but at least I've managed to handle this. Thank you so much, Sasha.
Thank you, Robert. We're so glad that the sound issue was sorted. I think what is very compelling about what you've shared as well is obviously the learning journey that the farmers have embarked on. So amongst the sample of 20 farmers that have been using this tool over 3 years, we've seen definite, increments and improvements in the application of agroecological principles. So I think where, your presentation is silent on the fact that obviously there has been engagement and sharing of lessons and a very strong process of like empowering in bringing capacity to the farmers to move on those different angles. And I think this is underpinning this work. Is like, okay, here's your baseline. We see you. This is how you can improve. So it's obviously a learning tool as well. It helps to channel energy towards improvement. So thank you very much for that. We're going to move to our last presenter, and not the least, Abbott Ntwali, who is from AFSA, our organization, one of our lead organizations for this webinar. He will be sharing more about these tools and what the team from AFSA has been taken from them. I'm going to quickly give you a few words about Abbott as you're getting ready to screen share. So Abbott Ntwali has for over a decade been involved in measuring the impact of interventions related to agroecological agriculture and reproductive health. Throughout his career, he has worked with a variety of organizations ranging from community-based NGOs to national and international NGOs. And Abbott is currently AFSA's Monitoring and Evaluation Officer. He's also an active member of the Uganda Evaluation Association, which is a professional body of evaluators in Uganda. So Abbott, we're very excited about what you're going to present for us. And it also seems that we're going to have Walter Mugove come in at the end of your presentation to share his experience with be presented about the principles of focus evaluation. So welcome to the two of you. And please, if you can present within the 10 minutes allocated to you.
I'll begin by giving an overview of the presentation. I want to begin by giving an overview about outcome harvesting, and then later on another overview of principles focused evaluation. Then I wrap it up with how the two complement each other before Walter comes on. So what's this animal outcome harvesting? It's a participatory approach, basically, that focuses on documenting outcomes, making sense of them, both the intended and unintended outcomes. It's very useful when it comes to attributing this change to the intervention or the activities of the project, and also establishing a cause-effect relationship where these are not easily seen. But it also lays a lot of emphasis on a clear definition of what an outcome is. And we say we recognize an outcome change in behavior, which is seen in the actions and activities or relationships. It could be also changes in policies and practices of individuals, could be groups or organizations or government institutions. And we're saying this change is as a result of the influence, either in a small way or large way, by the influence of the activities or our projects. So this is the definition of an outcome. Now, as an approach, there are a number of steps that are taken to document or to harvest outcomes. During evaluations, you need, of course, to have a very good design for the harvest. And then with this design, also complement it with the review of different documents, reports, progress reports on the project, how this has been happening. Then you begin drafting the outcomes. But we said it's a very participatory process. So the actors of the project, the implementers, the farmers on the farm, you engage them. This is step 3. We're calling human resource. You discuss with them, then you listen to them. What are these outcomes? As an evaluator, you're guiding the process on how to formulate these outcomes, what an outcome is, and you keep documenting this with them. But then, as we know, we need also to substantiate whatever comes out of these kind of discussions. How do we substantiate? We get other actors who are probably not part of this initial discussion to validate these outcomes and then also relate with the activities so that we can be able to attribute the activities to these outcomes, the cause effect relationship. Then we'll, at the end of the day, we'll of course have to make a very good interpretation in the report, but most importantly is how we use this information. At the end of the day, you have the outcomes. How do they feed into the next steps of the next phase of the project, or the remaining part, if the midterm review, the remaining part of the project, or if it's it's a monitoring activity, how does this feed into the decision-making process? I would like to share an example from one of the, this example comes from AFSA's climate change campaign that's happening in 8 countries, 8 countries from Eastern and Western Africa. But I've picked a particular example. This one comes from Zambia. You will see the outcome statement is clearly articulated. And in the outcome statement, the approach emphasizes 4 elements. The what the change is, when did this change happen, and where did this change happen. So, but also the how. Now, and we will see here in this outcome statement in the first column that in June, the Council of Siviwanga district in Zambia revised the climate change adaptation pillar of its integrated development plan to incorporate agroecology. Now, those of you who are familiar with advocacy work, there's a lot of engagement to influence duty bearers or decision makers to change policy or design new policies or introduce new ideas or proposals into the policy. So, and this may take a long time, usually takes a long time. So here we have a classic example of this kind of change happening in Zambia. And we are saying, but we know outcomes are context specific. So that's why we also have we emphasize to include the significance. How is this change related, or how is it important to the project or to anyone that is affected by by the campaign? So the promotion of agroecology within the policy was evident in the district documents, and the draft integrated plan now incorporates the climate action, which was absent in the old version. So already you can see that there's a change. We had this plan, and the new one now has agroecology integrated. And this plan acts as a roadmap to prioritize climate change adaptation and mitigation measures. But then why is this important? It's because the Zambian Climate Change Network basically advocates for and influences the development and implementation of climate change policies in that country. So how do we know that this change we are celebrating is a result of a contribution or input of ZCCN? And the evidence is that in February 2022, this network conducted capacity building training for all departments in the district on nationally determined contributions for carbon emission on agriculture, fisheries, forestry, and energy. Now, in an evaluation, of course, this is when you go back and say, okay, why is the evidence that you actually did this? That you actually did the capacity building as a way of gathering evidence and making sure that we're attributing ourselves the work we've actually done. So what do we learn from here? That the revision of integrated development plan to incorporate climate action indicates the importance of periodically reviewing and updating policies to align with new priorities that emerge within the climate change sector. So this is one of the examples. The second example is taken from Uganda. Again, it's on advocacy, where within the period of July and October 2022, the commissioner, who's a senior ranking officer in the Ministry of Water in Uganda, documented to include agroecology also in the final version that was submitted to the UNFCCC Secretariat ahead of COP27. This is from Pelham, Uganda. And why do we celebrate this? Because integrating agroecology in the nationally determined contribution is a very important milestone for the global, continental, and even Uganda's transition to agroecology, because now it provides the basis to engage with the decision makers and negotiators. And you see, previously the engagements with negotiators, this is where we're coming from, were not very successful. They were claiming that agroecology is not well understood, it's not recognized by the parties in their different country policies. So this is where we're coming from. Now that it is included in this position, the position of the negotiators, it's supposed to celebrate. This is a strong outcome. But how do we say we contributed as Pelham Uganda? Pelham is a member of AFSA. Now, Pelham has provided proposals to include agroecology. They have organized 3 meetings already with the Climate Change Department of the Ministry to raise awareness about the benefits of agroecology. So that was the starting point, but also developed and disseminated information materials in different media, including both the mainstream and social media, but also organized a retreat for the Climate Change Department of the Ministry to conduct a comprehensive review before submitting the final document. Now, they did not do this alone. It was done with, as well as with ESAF Uganda, Uganda Matters University, and others. So it was a partnership. So this is also part of attribution of the contribution. And what we learn from here is that the involvement of partners in analyzing these documents and providing proposals based on evidence underscores the importance of evidence-based advocacy. I'll go to principles-focused evaluation. It's also another participatory approach that this one emphasizes the underlying principles guiding a project or a program. It's an approach that recognizes the complexities of the systems, but also can work very well with or without outcomes or the traditional log frame or the theory of change. So in our context for agroecology, the principles can be agreed upon by the team, the project team, or everyone participating, usually not so many, not more than 8 perhaps. But also, while we are doing this principles focused evaluation, you may choose to evaluate a few of these principles to cut your scope to a manageable size. So we look at, I've called them steps, but steps in applying the principles focused evaluation. First and foremost is to define the principles. What are these principles that will guide us as we go along in the next, say, 3 years of the project. We clearly articulate these principles, agree on them as a team, and they could be based on what we agree, on what we stand for as agroecology actors or players, farmers, or even NGOs, civil society community. What are these principles? They could be based on sustainable goals. They could be based on the principles of agroecology themselves. Now,
Albert, I'm so sorry to break your flow. You're slightly over time. So if you can just wrap your present framing of this so that we can give Walter a fair chance to share his experience.
Oh, okay, thank you for that. So usually the few slides, then I'll be done. Thank you, Sasha. The main focus of the evaluation, we're using principles focused evaluation. We try to answer in broad these 3 questions. But of course, we can formulate other questions under each of these that will be discussed within the focus group discussions or key informant interviews. So after that, you decide how each of these questions will be answered. The effectiveness of the principles, then you document what has been observed as we discuss the findings. Then, of course, here we allow space for discussion, reviewing the principles in general, whether we need to rephrase, relating them to the outcomes. But most importantly, this is the last slide, is how do the 2 methodologies complement each other? The principles, one is that principles-focused evaluation can help us to inform the selection of outcomes. If you have your principles, which outcomes are likely to speak to these principles? But also, once we have these outcomes, how do we assess and relate that these outcomes we have seen at the end of the day, which may be unintended or intended, actually speak to any or some of the principles that we agreed on at the beginning. But also in terms of learning and adaptation, the outcomes harvesting can feed into the principles focused process to enable a continuing cycle of learning and improve effectiveness. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Albert. Yeah, this is a very dense topic, and thank you very much for diving into the intricacies of it. Are we going to invite Walter to share his experience in using the principles-focused evaluation approach? It would be nice when doing so that you hone down on the learnings, as Albert was saying, that you've derived from it. Is Walter there?
Thank you.
There you are.
Yes. Thank you, Sasha, and thank you, Albert, for introducing the principles focus evaluation as well as the outcomes harvesting. So I am Mugobe Walter Nyika in Lusaka, Zambia, working with the regional schools and colleges permaculture program, RISCOP in short. And I'll just share our story of the experience that we have had using principles focused evaluation and of late also outcomes harvesting. So as RISCOP, we developed a set of principles that for us painted a broad picture of who we are, our identity, a picture of what we do and how we do what we do. So we find principles are very good at clarifying those 3 things in terms of an organization. Principles of focus evaluation depends on who is working with them. So as RISCOP, we use the set that we have developed that, as I said, represents who we are and how we do what we do. But the communities that we work with, we have also helped them to develop their own set of principles. So our principles are not the same as those for the communities that we work with. And also RISCOP is part of a broader collaborative called Seeds and Knowledge Initiative, SKY, which is working in 4 countries in Southern Africa. And this collaborative, we are part of a partnership which is piloting agroecology at landscape level. So as this collaborative, we developed another set of principles of effectiveness. And so at all these levels, we have used the principles to evaluate our performance. And we have found them very useful because they don't just look at the work that we are doing, but also they look at our effectiveness as an organization or as a collaborative or as a community. So they are therefore good for analyzing our complex situation, our broad situation. And last year, Abbott trained us in outcomes harvesting. So in order to enrich our assessment of our work using the principles, we are using the outcome harvesting approach to come up with the results, changes in behavior that we can see from the work that we are doing. And we have found that very useful. So we take a particular principle and we harvest the outcomes that have arisen from the work of that particular principle. So because of time, I think I'll stop here. And then if people have got questions, I will be able to answer. So yeah, in brief, we have had very good experiences, principles and outcomes harvesting.
Walter, thank you so much for relaying your experience. Indeed, I think if anyone's got a specific question to address to you within the context of your work in Zambia, we'll invite them to do so by dropping the question in the Q&A box. And you can also please keep a close eye on the Q&A box and monitor it. I'll do the same and also the same of our speakers. Please can you have a close look at the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen and start typing responses to any questions that might pertain to you or be addressed to you. So thank you. We've got 20 minutes left for engagement, and I think we really want to hear everybody's voices to have a bit more engagement. I would like to, before we do so, and to also get a perspective from people in the room as a collective, ask my esteemed colleague Charles to please drop the Mentimeter link to the question we would like to ask the people in the room. So for those who are not familiar with Mentimeter, we will have a little link dropped in the chat box. You will click on that link and then you will type in an answer to the question that we're going to be asking you there. And what we're asking you today, in essence, is to share how you, as an organization, as a practitioner, or as a farmer, how do you go about monitoring change in your context, on your operation from an agroecological perspective? So, you know, you can share input in terms of the indicators that you're using, the principles that you're using. You know, how do you go about monitoring change? So you can see Charles has dropped the link now, and you can click on that link and you will see that you can have the opportunity to type in a response. I'm going to screen share to show everybody how it looks like. So you will see this. You click on the link and you will see this. How do you measure change in your agroecology work? We're interested in, you know, how you go about it in terms of the indicators, the elements that guide you, the metrics that you use. It will be very interesting to get a sense of how people do their work. So you've got 3 different options you can type in, and then you click on submit. and then we will see a picture emerge out of this. Whilst people are busy with this, I want to, yeah, so the link has been shared again. Thank you, Charles. Can the presenters have a look? I can see a couple of the questions have been answered in the chat box, so thank you for that. So Robert, there was a question addressed to you, I think in the use of the FAO tool. Did you meet farmers who are totally actually immersed into doing agroecological work? Okay, and then I can see there was actually an answer typed in there. So there was a total of 5 people who were actually doing agroecological work, and it took them 3 years to get there. So I think this was answered. I'm just trying to pick up on any other question that could be addressed by one of our speakers. Yeah, lots of questions about accessing the tools and the resources that have been shared again. These have been dropped in the Google Drive, so you can have access to all of these, and the French versions of the PowerPoints will also be included in the drive. How does the Mentimeter cloud look yourself, Charles? I can't see what's happening there. Do we have a picture emerging that we could start sharing?
There is so much coming in. Very interesting. As you can see, I need to present, I think. Yeah, so it sees how it's coming up. That's your responses, yeah.
Wonderful. So typically a word cloud just sort of aggregates all the responses. So there's a few mentions of participatory visits as a way of actually monitoring change. Some people use indicators related to market, whether there's like markets emerging around the production of agroecologically produced goods. I see the mention of yield and cost, the use of organic inputs, learning, assessing visits, policy change. So obviously this is specific to the organizations or the farmers themselves being involved in this process. So what I want to mention, because this is such an important discussion, I don't know whether there are many people familiar in the room with an initiative called the Transitions the Transformative Partnership Platform on Agroecology. So this is called the TPP. In short, it's a big multi-partner initiative that is running in a couple of countries in the south. And one of the projects of the Transformative Partnership is a project called Metrics. And this project Metrics is specifically looking at supporting transitions for building resilient and inclusive agricultural food systems by looking at the type of metrics that are out there and compiling a database of metrics that can better speak of measuring what matters. We are often stuck with this notion of, we're measuring costs. Is the cost in being taken up by the farmer, being alleviated by the uptake of agroecological practices? Is there an increment in yields? These are the hard economic metrics that are often cited. But, you also need to identify other metrics that can allow for equitable comparison between an agroecological system and a conventional system. How do we, also measure the soft elements related to better cohesion, improvement in the conditions of the farmers, the impact on the farmer livelihoods and health, biodiversity, ecosystem services. So these are very interesting elements. So I just wanted to flag this metrics initiative that can be found on the GLFX Global and Landscape Forum. I'll drop the link there so that our practitioners are aware of the research that's going out there, and that they will be generating a dashboard of novel indicators that can be used to track agroecological performance. So I'm sharing this, and I'm at the same time putting a question to all our speakers. When it comes to the metrics being used, what is your experience in the agroecological context? We've seen different tools being shared. We've seen reflection on how these tools have been shared. Do you feel that the tools that are out there give justice to the nuances, the intricate complexities of agroecological transition? Are we finding that the metrics that we're using are sufficient, that they're appropriate, that there could be better metrics that we use to monitor these changes? Because this is, for me, definitely a question. How do we tell this compelling story? Are we measuring the stuff that matters? So I would like to invite all our contributors today to please share some reflection about this. So perhaps starting with you, Robert, if you're there, it would be great to get your views on this question.
I beg your pardon, Sasha. I was responding to some question here in the chat. I missed your question.
Sure. Okay, it was quite a long statement, so I'll just reiterate it in brief. I've dropped the link to what I was sharing about the Global Landscapes Forum and the TPP, the Agroecology Transformative Partnership. And they're doing work on measuring, on basically mapping the different metrics that exist in measuring agroecological performance. And with the recognition often that the indicators being used are fairly conventional, metrics around crops, yields, costs, but there's also the recognition that there's other metrics out there that are not being used adequately, or that it's challenging to measure the soft stuff. So obviously, we've been talking about these other elements, especially for the tool that you're using, the FAO tool, the CAET tool. My question is, do we feel that as M&E practitioners, the typical indicators that we're using, are they adequate to measure the nuances and the complexities of the agroecological transitions? Do we feel that novel metrics are needed? Do we feel that what we're using is sufficient? And if not, what are the challenges? What should we be measuring that matters, that we're actually not able to measure? What do you feel are the limitations out there? So this is kind of like a panel question that I'd like to put to the three of you, and I would welcome your views on this, flowing from which we will take more questions from the room and ask for people to put their hands up with more questions. So Robert, if you want to share anything on the question I've asked, please go ahead, and then I will ask Moses and Abba to also respond.
Okay, thanks so much, Sasha, and thanks for the question. I would say when you look at the CAET tool and score sheet, it explicitly brings out all the aspects, all the metrics. For example, we have food and culture traditions, we have circular economy and solidarity. Because I just shared a snapshot of the elements, but those elements, if you unpack them, they really talk about all the metrics that we are talking about, and it would be sufficient to really collect data on agroecology. But now it needs an understanding. So the only limitation is that if somebody is not well grounded in agroecology and with the principles and elements, they might not be able to use it properly. So the first step is for you to get grounded in agroecology, understand the elements, unpack them very well and the principles, and you will see that all the metrics that we are looking for are embedded in there. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Moses. Can we ask you to respond perhaps from, the perspective of the private sector?
Okay, thank you, Sasa. From the private sector, I'm thinking the tools seem to be sufficient. However, if we look at the overall impact, we really need to walk the journey, because whereas we are advocating for agroecology and so on, there is the other sector, which is the industrial sector. They are also pushing very hard. So what should really be the main focus is we need to break down some of these principles and then introduce the simplest or the first ones to the different actors, let's say the farmers. For example, if you talk of use of inputs, when we look at the principle of efficiency and recycling, the farmers should first get to understand that the lesser we use of, let's say, of the industrial inputs, and then the more we integrate these other natural inputs, actually contribute towards agroecology. So we just need to get the journey started by adopting the first principle. Then the other principles along the levels can come into play. But the measuring tools are sufficient.
Thank you for that perspective. And Abbott, your views?
There that can answer these M&E questions, that can help us to measure agroecology. And I think for me, it's about what you want to measure that will guide which tool is appropriate. Robert and Moses have spoken very well about the two tools, which I think I also find very appropriate. However, in the policy spaces, in the advocacy spaces, we also have different approaches, like the ones we just talked about, outcome harvesting and principles focused evaluations. Again, it's a question of to what extent are these approaches and tools being used. So in the advocacy spaces, these are new, relatively new approaches that are still gaining traction. Sky is already using the principles focused evaluation, and they have recently taken on outcomes harvesting. And outcomes harvesting and principles evaluation are we can say gaining track now. But the tools are there. We just need to use them more and more. But there's also an element of complementarity. They are not standalone tools. Some of them complement each other. So as we do M&E, as project people and M&E practitioners, we need to look out for which tools are the best ones to complement each other.
Thank you, Abbott. And I think just bouncing off this notion of metrics that matter. See, for instance, Bridget Okono from Zambia has made mention of nutrition density in the A crops. And this, for me, is the type of metric that matters and often would not be incorporated in a standard M&E practice measuring impact or change. So I don't know, maybe perhaps a question to you, Robert, and in the use of the CAET tool, is it that it's being tracked at all? Are you still with us, Robert? Because I do think this was a valuable consideration when it comes to assessing the way we're producing. Okay, we will just keep that one flagged for Robert when he comes back. I think I would like to give an opportunity for people to just raise any question, hands up. I see a lot of the questions have been answered in the Q&A box, so this is great. And just for everybody's information, Have Science Sky are busy compiling a booklet, capitalizing on all the learnings that have come out of these 8-part webinar series and all the questions that have been asked, all the feedback that has been received. It will all be included in that booklet that we'll be sharing. So watch this space, don't worry, the resources are going to be shared with you. I see Elvis has you have your hand up. Please go ahead with your question.
Yes, thank you very much. My question is based on what we can call intervening variables. And from these presentations, among the intervening variables could be the two things. one could actually be a direct variable. Number one, how do we make sure that these tools are put at the disposal of what they would call in Kiswahili a common mwananchi, ordinary citizens, very ordinary, I mean, in the villages, people, let's say, who only speak local languages, and they have, because most of the farmers, local farmers in many African countries are peasant farmers, and they are small-scale farmers, I mean. So how do we make sure that we get these tools as close as possible to them? Number two, how do we avoid massive land grabbing because these projects, when they go on industrial scale, what we have seen in some countries, those who are involved in land justice will tell you that there is a temptation of going on now at rampage. Since I have the means, I have the tools, and I have the money, I buy off my neighbors so that I increase the production. And it's it's what they call a willing seller and a willing buyer. But then that willingness, we know what it means. Because we have seen in some places where farming blocks have generated what we call indirect or induced land grabbing. Thank you.
Thank you, Elvis, for this two-pronged question. Are you addressing these questions to any specific speaker?
Not really. I just put them even for you. I mean, last time I followed your presentation, you presented something very interesting on I think it was you or your colleague talking about Zimbabwe and how the chickens, village chicken and so forth. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was in India. Yeah.
Yeah. So I've just put them there so that we can all benefit. Thank you.
Okay, but I think let's give a chance to anyone in a panel who wants to respond to how do we make sure these intervening variables, as you put them, Elvis, how do we make sure that these elements are made available to lay people? Are you talking from in the context of an enemy?
Yeah. What I mean is, how do we make sure that they are available to the lay people, to the ordinary farmers? Yeah, that there are a lot of farmers who have no chance of going to school even to get certain basic education. Because I remember when I was a kid, when I was read through, when someone wanted to demean me or demean someone, they would call you a farmer, So it is in that sense, in most of the African societies, people who are doing farming, the real farming, are very ordinary people, and these tools could be very useful to them. So how do we make sure that this information reaches what we say in Kiswahili, common mwananchi?
Yeah, so I suppose you're not speaking, per se of the tools per se, but basically the knowledge base to improve their practices. So I think, if anyone wants to respond in terms of, how these M&E frameworks become tools that empower farmers to improve their practices, and any experience of this, basically, and also speaking of the issue of language and making them available in vernacular languages. Anyone wants to respond?
Yes, I would like to respond on that one. I found the principles focused evaluation useful for that because, as I indicated earlier, the communities define their own principles. So this requires a lot of engagement, a lot of dialogue amongst the members of the community so that they agree on a particular set. So this really embeds the principles within the community. So they use their local language and so that they fully understand what they are coming up with. So this puts the ownership of the principles, which are then going to be used for assessment within the community itself. And then when the community assessing their performance, they go back to the same principles which they developed on themselves and use them to look at the results of what they are doing, and they can use outcomes harvesting to make sure that they focus on changes in behavior. And so this can be done in their local language, and with the full ownership of the actual assessment by the community. So I found PFE very useful for making sure that the communities are really owning up to the assessment of the work that is happening. Thank you.
Thank you, Walter. I think this speaks nicely to the questions that's been asked. I think I'm going to give Ferdinand the opportunity for the last hand before we formally close this webinar.
Thank you, Sasha. I just want to also contribute in answering that question. I think it's important to, as NGOs, as governments, as projects, to start thinking on how to embed these tools within the project cycle, so that from the start, there is some thought around what tools we want to integrate with what we are implementing, so that there are sessions for capacity enhancement of local communities. If it's a project on food gardens, for example, and how can we factor in an outcome harvesting process from that implementation, so that it becomes part and puzzle of our project cycle. And well, that's just what I'm thinking on that question, and it's given me a lot of insights on even how we are doing the healthy soil, healthy food in the next slide, and discuss this with farmers, so that we can now start thinking around monitoring and evaluation using now these tools that have been developed. Thank you.
This is wonderful, Ferdinand. This is confirmation that just making practitioners aware of these tools has definitely had impact. So we're grateful for that. Again, our ambition today was not to give you like a lecture, a know-how on how to use these tools, but to make people aware of these tools. And then, you know, it's for people to go out there and to seek ways of obviously harnessing the knowledge to use them. So it's great to know that you're finding, obviously, you have identified usefulness there. At this juncture, I just want to firstly say a warm thank you to our amazing speakers today. The work you do out there is highly significant, and it's very complex to distill the nature of the tools that you use and how these can be harnessed and all the context-specific stuff you've been sharing. So thank you very much for our 3 speakers today. I also want to warmly thank the organizing committee. You've been steadily working at putting together the dense subject matter, thinking of how we frame, how we conceptualize these sessions so that they're relevant, so that people actually can harness some knowledge on the ground. So really, especially to Charles and Stephanie Aubin, thank you so much for the time and energy you've invested into this. And Ferdinand Wafula, you've just spoken, and you've been a very, very active contributor in framing these sessions. And thank you to all the leads within the HSHF centers, all the partners involved to have helped with framing these discussions. We will, as mentioned, be sharing the booklet where all the resources will be made available. You already have been shared quite a few times, the link to the PowerPoints here and to the tools. Before you leave us and before we do the formal closure, please, can you look at the last link that has been shared by Charles there? We would like you to please complete a short survey. It's important for us, talking about M&E, to appreciate whether the content that has been presented is relevant, to also understand what could be improved for the next series. Because our organizations are always interested in distilling knowledge through webinars. So what can we be doing better? So please click on this Kobo Toolbox survey before you leave and share your views in a constructive way. I would like to ask Charles, do we? Yes?
Yeah, Stefan Aubin wants to say something very briefly.
Yeah, no,
I didn't see
before
your
we
hand there, sorry.
close- No, before we close, as you were thanking everyone, I think the rest of the organizing team would like to also thank you very much for the amazing magical facilitation you've been doing this very long series, and all the time so passionate and holding the space in such interesting way. So thank you so much, Sasha, and also in between sessions participating in the framing of this webinars. I think you added also so much to the team, so thank you so much. And also not to forget Stephanie Swanepoel, who's been a bit silent in the background, but documenting all the sessions. She will be the lead in finalizing that booklet that Sasha mentioned earlier, but also behind the scene, really connecting with all the speakers and sharing the questions. And so thank you so much also, Steph, for that support. Thanks.
Yeah, and also to thank the organizing committee members, not mentioning your names, but I know some of you are here. Thank you so much. Whatever content has been shared, it's been agreed upon by a team of people. And many thanks to the Healthy Soil, Healthy Food Centers who have had representation on this. Roseed, Roseed in Uganda, BioG in Kenya, Tsuru in Zimbabwe, CAET in Tanzania, Eco Impact in Burkina Faso, Bioprotect in Burkina Faso, Eco Impact in Togo, and so many other health food centers that have been here from East Africa, from West Africa, from Southern Africa. It's a long list of 15. How do I want to mention all the 15? Just to say also quickly that we are going to be launching a new series of the webinars, but this will be running every after 2 months, not 2 weeks. So it is because of that I want to emphasize that you kindly give us your thoughts on how the 8 webinars have gone, so we know which new topics you want to learn, areas to improve, and things like that. Talking about M&E, so we want to also do monitoring and evaluation for our webinars. So that's all from me, Shasha.
This is wonderful. Thank you. I think the round of thanks hopefully covered everyone, and I personally tremendously enjoyed the intellectual density. I'm just amazed, at the quality of insights that have been shared. It's been an amazing learning journey. And I think as a team, we've managed to improve the webinars as we went. I think testimony to this is the incremental number of participants we got for each webinar. So I think as a team, we worked well. So that was great. I think enough patting on the shoulder. Charles, here we're going to invite to formally close this session for us. I think there was the AFSA Nate in the room.
There was Bridget. Bridget, are you there? If you're not there, Bridget.
I'm here, Charles.
Okay, Bridget is
there we go. Bridget, greetings. And will you kindly honor us with formally closing the session for us?
Thank you so much, Sasha. And thanks for the excellent facilitation for the different sessions we've had. I think a lot of thanks has been given to the committee, so I do not want to repeat that. But of course, on behalf of AFSA, we do appreciate the efforts that have been put in by so many people, their brains, to ensure that we have this 8-part series of webinars on healthy soils and healthy foods. And just to briefly mention that from AFSA, this is very important to us. One, because it helps respond to some of the key questions that we do, find as advocates, as practitioners of agroecology. So if we get questions around how do we measure agroecology, how do we scale it up, how do we know, it is working, then we can discuss and respond to some of these webinars so that when we go out there and meet the forces against us, we are able to really respond to them. So I really appreciate the time that we've all taken to be part of this series. And like Charles has mentioned, it is really critical for us that you do please respond to the Kobo tool so that we know what to organize for the coming webinars. This will help build our knowledge, but also ultimately help build the agroecology movement. So once again, I thank you all for the good work that has been done, the facilitators, our excellent moderator, and I look forward to seeing the outcome, the outputs in terms of the book that we're working on. Thank you, and a good weekend to you all.
Thank you so much, Bridget. And before we part, please, can everybody have their camera on? This will be the final happy family photo. If we can take a few shots for our booklet.
Yeah, and this has been the biggest webinar, Shasha. 128 people. We didn't have that number before. So we must clap.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you, Charles Tumuhe.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sasa.
Hey, I hear Mr. Aruna's voice.
Yes, good.
Taking the photos now.
Yeah.
I'm taking the screenshots. Okay, turn your video on. I take one more round of photos. Wilberforce Silate is here. Okay, so I'm done with the screen share. I mean the screen shooting, and I'm going to close. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Very much. Bye. Thank you, everyone. Wonderful presentation.